Here we are to explain a little bit more about Project One, the moving parts, the ways you will be assessed, and how you should go about achieving the project's objectives. So in this project, get ready for it, you are going to be researching the Silicon Valley Bank collapse, which occurred in spring of 2023. You are going to impersonate a marketing and communications executive at a bank, and you will be composing an email to assuage investors' fears and educate them. So, this sounds a little wild, but let's get into it. So, I am going to walk us step by step. This is all on the assignment sheet that you can find on Canvas or in the assignment files. You can find all this information there, but I'm just going to take us through it. So your background, the background for this project is that you are a marketing and communications executive at Community Bank. And this is a bank in Alabama that serves a modest Southern population. You are responsible for communicating with clients to update them on new initiatives and offerings in the company, alert them to changes in policy and procedures, but also to educate them about issues that might impact their client experience. So your job is a mixture of PR and client education. So this is a very specific niche that you fill. On March 10th, 2023, federal investigators closed Silicon Valley Bank. This is a real thing that happened, if you remember. It was completely shuttered after many investors withdrew their funds over a short time. So, given the speed of this large bank's failure, the clients in your bank are emailing you and emailing the bank with a lot of worry over the security of CB's investments, worrying that CB would meet the same fate as Silicon Valley Bank. So ultimately, you'll do some research about this. The investors did get their money back in the Silicon Valley Bank experience. However, it's not always the case that that is what happens. So other investors and other banks get a little worried and begin to think, maybe I should take my investments out of the bank too. And as we all know, this is what leads to depressions, economic depressions. So here are some facts about your bank. And I am giving you these facts because I think it will help you as you begin to think about how you should speak to the clients in the bank. So, your client base, the people who invest in your bank, is quite diverse. Their investors come from many different employment sectors. Some of their investors do have high interest backing, but many clients have very stable funds with low interest backing. Also, they have a diverse investment portfolio, so the actual money that the bank gets from their clients, they then invest that in a lot of different things. So their income stream is flexible and varied. Now, you might not know what I'm talking about. I didn't even know what any of this meant until I talked to Alex Broadhead, who was the person, if you remember from week 1, the interview. So this is a real scenario that happened, and I'm giving you this information for good reason. Okay, so here's your objective. You are going to compose an email to CB's clientele that educates them about the factors that led to Silicon Valley Bank's failure and that assuages their fears that CB is vulnerable to collapse. So that's the purpose. The final draft needs to use a tone that demonstrates a deep understanding of the needs of your audience. So remember, you have some information about that bank. It's a Southern bank. It has a small population. And the email should offer a full explanation of all the issues and should use language that is concise and clear. So you're like, how the hell am I going to do this? Unless you're a banking executive, which none of us are, I don't think, you are going to have to educate yourself a little bit about this. So I say assigned articles, but I did not assign any because there is a wealth of information and a wealth of ways that you might educate yourself about this particular event. You might consider reaching out to friends who know more about this than you do, or professionals if you know someone who works at a bank or who has any information about that, to conduct short interviews to help you understand these complex issues. You can even go to Gen AI. You could perhaps ask them about some of these issues, asking some basic questions about banking concepts in general, to see what they have to say, and maybe even asking about the kinds of language to use when discussing things with banking clients, some jargon, that kind of thing. You will then draft the email. So you might decide to use Gen AI to draft that email. You might not. So you're going to use that why, how protocol. I had a 3-step at the beginning and I put what in the middle there. So I'm streamlining it. I'm always working on it. But for now, you're asking yourself, why would I use it? Is there a good reason to do so? And then how am I going to do this? And what will I need to do in order to make sure that the content is reliable? And then you are going to revise and edit, obviously, to meet the needs of your audience while fulfilling the email's objectives. So that is the project. There are other parts to it, so hold on. So first off, why am I doing this? I'm so sorry. Or congratulations, because really, this is exactly what Alex Broadhead did in her job this past spring. And I'm sure her version is much more expert because she's actually been in this industry for a while. However, it mirrors what you actually do as a professional writer. And, I worked for this global fashion industry sustainability report thing, and this is exactly what I had to do whenever I was working in the industry. You have to quickly educate yourself about a complex topic. You don't have very long. You have to turn in something pretty polished, and you've got to do it like that. You also need to consider how to convey these complex things in a clear and concise way. You just spent the last basically 2 weeks thinking about how to do that. You also have to think about an audience. There's a specific investor audience that you're speaking to and the voice that you guys want to convey through that messaging. And then, of course, if you do choose to use Gen AI, and I encourage you to do so for the drafting of this, you're going to continue to build those literacy skills for using AI, where you're going to learn about how to best do the prompting and this kind of thing. So let's talk about all of the moving parts. You are going to have 4 different deliverables. There's a first draft that's due at the end of week 5. So you have all of next week to work on that first draft. You also have a peer review report that comes the week after that. So you have a good bit of time to think about how you might want to revise. You can drop in and have meetings with me. You can schedule specific meetings with me. Then you have a final draft. So this is all about the actual email. And then there's a substantial piece called the analysis. And for each of your projects, because we're using Gen AI, you're going to be writing analyses of how your process went, what you learned about using Gen AI, how you had to do extra steps. Because the more you reflect on your process, the better able you will be to use the tool and to do this kind of work, regardless of if you use Gen AI in the future. So I'm going to assess the first 2 as a homework piece. They get their separate grades, but it's going to be, did you fulfill all the requirements there? So if you did a first draft that met all of the requirements of the first draft as outlined in the assignment, then you're going to get 100. If you miss some of those pieces, you might get less. Similarly, there is a peer review report, and it's going to be, did you meet all of the requirements? If yes, then it's 100. These 2 are actual more analytic, or they're more evaluative rubrics, and I'll show you what those rubrics are. So the peer review report is going to be, and this is all on campus, you're going to take the Project 1 rubric that I will be using to assess you guys, and you're going to fill that out for your peer. And so you will be paired up with peer review on Canvas, and we'll talk about if you have any questions about where to turn that in. But it's pretty easy to do. You're going to fill out the entire rubric for them, leave them comments for each of the criteria, and then leave a final comment that talks about what you think their biggest needs for improvement are. Next, here is the assignment sheet for the analysis. And this is just kind of to give you an idea, because again, it's all on Canvas, but you are going to compose a pretty substantial document. So in the past, I've had these kind of reflections that are like 200 words. I hesitated to put a word count on this because I can't say exactly like how much you should write. It needs to be thorough, as you'll see in the upcoming rubric. So how did you come to understand the concepts at play in this project? What kind of research did you conduct to figure out what you were even going to say? Then, how did you use Gen AI? If you didn't, what did you do instead? How did you change that draft from beginning to end? And what were your thoughts on that? Then talk to me about the structure. So this is where we're talking about some of those concepts of professional communication. Did you use direct or indirect structure on this email? What kind of tone did you try to achieve? That kind of thing. So this should be a very thorough analysis. I'm not going to give you a word count, but I want you to tell me as much as you can. So here's the rubric for the actual email. So you will be assessed on the email and then on the actual analysis, and those are separate evaluations. So the email, does it have a suitable tone for the rhetorical situation? You can look back to the assignment sheet to figure out what kind of a bank it is, what kind of clients I serve, but you can also look back at our professional communication lecture to think about tone and look at some of those resources on the course slides that I gave you from the book Writing That Works. Do you clearly and concisely educate the audience about the security of CB's investments relative to SVB? So this is, did you meet the content requirements? Finally, did you include information that's accurate and truthful? Did you employ a good and correct structure for the writing or for the email? And then did you use solid design choices when you were doing so? So all of this just has to do with basic email stuff, basic professional communication stuff. For the analysis, you are going to have to thoroughly describe the research process. So you see that I'm emphasizing this concept of thorough. This semester, and you guys might be like, I'm so upset that I am taking this class whenever it's all about Gen AI, but we're trying to figure out, how is this tool being used? What are we going to do to make it work for us? What are we going to do to make it meaningful? So I want you to be really thorough in telling me how you did all these things. How did you research it? How did you draft it? How did you edit it and revise it? Now, thoroughly and accurately describe and defend the structure of the final draft. So the reason I say accurately is because you need to have ownership over what you write. So in the future, I think for the most part in academia, in schooling, maybe not so much on the job because you should already have these skills, but I think that there's going to be a huge emphasis on making sure that students can take ownership and really know what the content of their own writing is. So it's clear that they did not just outsource it to Gen AI. So you need to understand why you made the choices that you made. And honestly, that's going to help you become a better writer in general. Then, can you thoroughly and accurately describe and defend the tone that you set in that email? Did you include references to at least 2 pieces of course material and discuss how that material affected your composing choices in Project 1? So this is something you need to do for the analysis, and that sheet discusses it. So the full assignment discusses that. And then if you did use Gen AI prompts, I need an appendix with screenshots of that. Finally, you do actually turn in a works cited for the analysis where you include citations for all of the sources you used during Project 1. So this is all that I have for you. Obviously, I imagine there are questions that you have. Again, I wish we were in class so I could address those in person and we could really talk it out. This is the first time I've done this particular version of this assignment. So please feel free to reach out to me if you have burning questions about this. And just remember that we have a while for you to think through, research, draft, get some feedback, and then finally turn in your final project. So best of luck researching about banking.